Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back to another SHA webinar. Joel Housen with Saskatchewan Hockey. So excited to have Heather back with us tonight to talk about sleep and performance. Just going to pass it over to Joe LaPrairie from our office to give some instructions on how everything will run. So go ahead, Joe.
Thanks, Joel. So yeah, those who may not have been on last night's webinar, we're gonna have Heather Hynes here today talking about sleep and performance. Just a couple things if you're not familiar with Zoom. There is a chat function if you want to ask your questions through there. If you hover over the screen towards the bottom middle will be the chat box that you can select, and then you can type your question in there and we'll get to it when we can. And if not, you're free to open up your microphone and ask a question if you like. Of course, there'll be time at the end for questions. The webinar will be recorded. They'll be made available later on. So at our development webinar page or YouTube page. So you can check it out there later on if you missed something or if you want teams or other friends to check it out. So pass it back to you, Joel.
Thanks, Joe. Just going to introduce Heather with the Sports Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan. We're very pleased to have her present to us tonight on sleep and performance. This is something that's been talked about lots the last, I'd say 5-6 years. So it's exciting to get a presentation about sleep and on how it relates to high performance athletes. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Heather, and we can start.
Great. And I will share my screen and hopefully everyone joins me as we start the presentation. And thanks so much for the opportunity. And yeah, this was a presentation that really was developed based on need in high performance sport to get athletes, coaches, parents, anyone really working in high performance sport to become aware of the importance of sleep when we're looking to perform, and also to really get athletes to place a large priority on sleep and sleep routines. And I spent a lot of my time in March and April working with high performance athletes to manage sleep because their schedules had changed so much. And so you might find that that's similar now if you're doing virtual school for the athletes on the call, or if your schedule might change quite a bit over the holidays. You'll see as we go through the content how important it is to be consistent and not to build too much of what we call a sleep debt. So not too many hours that you're missing of sleep. So for those that were on the call last night, you know that I'm not a sleep doctor. I'm a sport dietitian. And we really pulled this presentation together as an integrated approach with lots of different consultants with the Sport Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan building the content together. And as we go through the slides, you'll see that we're really focusing on all components that will impact an athlete's ability to get quality sleep. And we're also going to talk about what quality sleep actually is. So the organization that I work for, and I've been working for since 2002, is the Sport Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan, and we're a nonprofit organization that provides performance enhancing sport medicine and science services to athletes and coaches within Saskatchewan, and we get funding through Sask Lotteries. We have many different programs, many that Sask Hockey takes full advantage of, which is great. I've just highlighted the ones that I'm directly involved with, whether that's in program delivery, development, or individual help for athletes that need it. But there's lots of other services that can be offered through the Sport Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan. Some we recommend that athletes do them annually, such as the Drug Education and Awareness Program. And then the Sport Nutrition one can really build and build depending on what types of knowledge that you're looking to achieve. We also make sure whenever we're reaching out to groups that we highlight other resources that are available within Canada, such as Respect in Sport and the Kids Help Phone, just to be aware of the services that we have and the contact information for both of those organizations. So what we're going to be going through today, similar to yesterday, if you do have a piece of paper and a pencil, then that's great because you can pull together a bit of a sleep plan. So we're going to look at the importance of setting up a plan, looking at the importance of sleep and sleep quality and how to assess sleep quality. We're going to do an interactive quiz looking at daytime sleepiness. And then we're going to look at actually getting into the sleep routine. So how do we create an environment that promotes sleep and quality sleep? And then looking at what sleep deprivation would lead to. So if we're not getting the amount of hours that we need, and through research that's been done in high performance sport, we know that lots of athletes struggle with getting the amount of sleep that they require, how that can impact your overall health, your body's ability to recover, and in addition to recover your body's composition, so the amount of lean muscle mass versus fat mass on the body, and ultimately what that can do in regards to performance. And then there are some action items, hopefully you can pull together at the end of how to actually put something into place. So different strategies that you might look at developing if this is an area that you want to be working on. So here's just kind of the getting started section. So hopefully there's some information from this presentation that you can use in your daily lives. I know a sports schedule can kind of be all over the place depending on when you train, if you're a coach on the call, when you're coaching, or if you're officiating a game, when the game might be, because there's lots of components that are going to impact when we can go to sleep and when we need to wake up. And so if you have morning training sessions before school, if you can only get ice time later in the evening, all of these components are going to impact when we can go to sleep, and how our sleep might be variable from one day to the next. So it can be really helpful to pull together a bit of a plan. So we're going to look at all components of sleep and how we get the athlete ready to perform. And so looking specifically at the components of sleep, so what the body's trying to do when we go to sleep, the nutritional implications of how we can support getting into deep sleep quicker, the impact that not getting enough sleep will have on mental preparation, exercise and conditioning, and then other medical considerations. And like I said at the start, I am not a sport doctor who works in sleep, but I will show you an excellent resource to access if you, at the end of this presentation, are thinking, you know, I've been trying to work on sleep, it's not getting better, what should I do next? I'll show you pretty much the best resource that we have who works in high performance sport in Calgary. So I'll show the website to go for that information. So we spend about 1/3 of our life asleep, and it has a massive impact on our overall level of performance. And so you've probably seen an infographic or a picture like this before. So, you know, over these last 2 nights, we're tackling both of those, the eating part and the sleeping part, because it really has a big impact on how we're able to perform. And we want to use it as something that we have as a skill, especially once, you know, tournaments and travels happen again, that can have an even bigger impact on our sleep. So we want to have some skills in place to manage our ability to fall asleep. So these are just some quotes from some pretty famous athletes. So Michael Phelps there at the top. For those that don't know me, the sport that I competed in was swimming. And so it's brutal of a schedule in that most training happens at around 6 in the morning and then again at night. So it's pretty common for most swimmers to just eat, sleep, swim, and that's all he would have done. And, you know, another athlete who's a gymnast, making sure that he's training right, eating right, and sleeping right. Really, those are the controllable factors when we think about high performance sport. And then Usain Bolt down there at the bottom, I need to rest and recover in order for the training I do to be absorbed by my body. So allowing this main recovery phase, which is when we go into sleep, allowing our body to use that time to be able to adapt to the physical activity that we've done. There's many professional teams that look at sleep as a critical piece to their athletes' success. Obviously, the budgets when you start looking at these professional teams are quite different than amateur sport, but they're really making sure that their players understand the importance of sleep and ensuring that they're supporting an environment so that sleep can be achieved. And I've seen that done by athletes at all levels. I've seen athletes that work on what we call their sleep hygiene, so getting into a a good sleep state when they're getting ready to go to bed. I've seen athletes work on that when they get to a Canada Winter Games or a Canada Summer Games, and they're just putting in the effort and preparation in advance so that they're not going to be missing out on sleep even if they're away from home. So there's not one system in the body that isn't affected by sleep. So our physical, our psychological, and our emotional components are very much impacted by sleep, whether we're getting enough sleep or whether we are not. And I'm sure we can all think of examples of times when we haven't got enough sleep, especially if that's over a number of days, and how much that can start to decrease our ability to think, our ability to focus, let alone our ability to do anything at high intensity. And so sometimes we just kind of assume that as high performance athletes that we should just feel tired all the time, that that's just normal. And it definitely is not. So if you're carrying a lot of fatigue from one day into the next, that's a bit of a red flag, and it should highlight that there's something that you need to be working on. So this is another infographic that just shows kind of all components that sleep can have an impact on. And we're going to talk about quite a few of them during this presentation. So in the nutrition section, we'll talk about the impact that sleep can have on weight control. In the kind of exercise and sports section, we'll talk about the impact that sleep can have on reaction time, stamina, recovery, accuracy. And then in the mental prep section, we'll talk about how it can impact someone's level of motivation and someone's decision-making skills. So you can look at all of those areas and really think about how it would impact sport performance, specifically in your sport, with things like decision-making and accuracy. I mean, that's critical that someone is on their game when they're having to do a high intensity session or when they have a competition. So being able to focus in on what quality sleep actually is, and I find the more we understand it, the more of a priority we can make it, because everyone is busy, but we can make it a priority when we understand what our body is trying to do when we're going to sleep. So we'll start by looking at the different components of sleep, and this is sometimes information that's covered in other disciplines, and you maybe have learned about it, which is great. So we won't spend too much time on it. But there's different stages of sleep. So they're listed right here. So we have stage 1, where we just kind of go into light sleep, and then into stage 2, when respiration slows down, heart rate decreases, and the body cools off slightly. Then we get into stage 3, which is when deep sleep starts. Now we're kind of getting into that stage of that deep sleep that's so important. Stage 4, deep sleep continues. You can start looking at what happens within deep sleep, body repair, immune maintenance. So critical pieces of the puzzle if you're looking at recovery. And then stage 5, which is rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, people will call it. That's when we have dreaming occurring, memory, learning, recall, organization in the brain occurs when we get into deep sleep. So I have heard from some athletes that they'll say, oh, I had such a brutal sleep last night. I don't even think I dreamt. And that's something that, if someone's waking up and they feel restless and they feel more tired than before, then that might be, an area to work on, which is maybe they're not staying asleep, or maybe they're just kind of hovering in that light sleep transitional period, and they're not able to get into deep sleep very efficiently. So if you're wondering how we determine someone's sleep quality, these would be the factors that we look at. So spending at least 85% of the time when you're in your bed asleep. And this is something I know if people are, on different streaming devices or, binge watching different shows, you might spend a lot of time in your bed, but you might, have a screen in front of your face, which definitely has an impact on the number of hours that you're getting for quality sleep. Falling asleep within 30 minutes or less, that's a really important one. And I've heard from sleep experts in the area say that if you can't fall asleep within 30 minutes or less, it's actually not a benefit to just keep lying there and like willing yourself to sleep. Lots of sleep doctors will recommend that you actually like get up, walk around, and then kind of reset yourself and kind of start over that process of sleep hygiene that we're going to talk about in some of the later slides. You don't want to just keep lying there saying, fall asleep. It's pretty stressful, and it usually doesn't work out very well. But if you can fall asleep quickly, then that would be a component of higher sleep quality. Waking up no more than once per night. And if you do wake up, being awake for 20 minutes or less after initially falling asleep. So let's say you have to wake up, you have to go to the washroom, you're able to wake up, go to the bathroom, come back, lie back down and fall asleep quite quickly. So those would be some determinants that you know that sleep quality is pretty good. If you're wondering how much you need, it's very much based on your age. These are general guidelines. I believe it's the next slide that'll show you the guidelines that we have within sport. So, most athletes on the call would be requiring kind of in that 8 to 9, 7 to 9 hour range. Now there's many people that will tell me, oh, I can get by with way less. And I'm sure you can get by, but usually our goal isn't to just get by. And so when we're looking at what the body actually requires, it might be quite different than what you're actually providing it. I would say a slight silver lining to some of the changes in schedules that started in March was that many people were getting more sleep than they ever have before. And so, that might be seen as a positive, or it might have meant that you were allowed to focus on sleep or sleep in if you didn't have morning training sessions. So some of that can also be a positive, especially if you were looking during that time of allowing your body to fully recover or work on something else. I had lots of athletes working on putting on mass, so gaining strength onto their body during that time. So for athletes, the recommendations are kind of in the same range. So 9 to 10 hours or 7 to 9 hours in that range. And lots of research shows that that's not happening. And there's lots of things that pull from that. There can be the time expectations of training, and also homework or catching up on other things that needs to be done. Early morning training sessions for the sport that I was in of swimming, that is just standard that you train in the morning. There's lots of teams I know in hockey that train in the morning, and it doesn't mean that that's wrong. It just means that you have to adjust on the other end. So if you're going to be waking up earlier, then you need to go to bed earlier the night before in order to get the same amount that your body actually requires. And if you know that you're not going to be able to do that, then try to nap if you can, or try to catch up a little bit on the weekend or when your schedule allows. So sleep deprivation. So this is what's happening if you're not giving your body enough sleep. I would say probably for 3 or 4 or more consecutive days. We know it has a big impact on someone's ability to learn. So you can see a drop in people's school performance if they're in school and they're not getting enough sleep. It can have an impact on mood and irritability, weight gain for a number of reasons, and we'll talk about that in the nutrition section. Depleted energy, and I would say also a greater dependency on stimulants. So we're not getting the sleep quality that we need. So we just start drinking more coffee or energy drinks, or we look for sources of caffeine so that we can kind of block that feeling in our brain of fatigue and just kind of keep going and ignore it. And so we start building up these bigger dependencies on those stimulant type ingredients. Impact on vision for sure. If we have lots of nights of not getting enough sleep, we know that it can affect our immune system. So in trying to keep ourselves healthy, it's critically important. And it can make any GI issues worse. So that's something to be aware of if there is something that you're already dealing with. So when you're looking to actually build better sleep, these would be building a better sleep routine and terms that people have sometimes called your sleep hygiene. So usually when I think of this list, I think of how I use the word train because it's what I did, how you train children to sleep. You want to create a soothing pre-sleep routine so that the body knows what's coming. You want to unplug for at least 1 hour before bed. So that would be technology or any types of screens. You'd want to reduce caffeine intake. And caffeine intake or caffeine in itself has about a half-life of usually between 4 to 6 hours, meaning that if you drink or you have a caffeine source, it will last in the body for that duration. So limiting caffeine intake later on in the day. And that's something that I've been really cautious with for athletes that use caffeine pre-training or pre-game, is that if those games are at night or that training session's at night, if they find that pre-workout caffeine source makes it so that they can't go to sleep, that's way more of a negative than a positive. And so you really have to know how your body is responding to those caffeine sources. We don't want to go to bed on a full or empty stomach, and we'll talk about some ideal options in a little bit later on. Engaging in regular physical activity, that would just be during the day. So, lots of people will ask questions of like, when's the best time to work out? And there's no concrete answer on that, but we know that those that are physically active during their day do typically have better sleep. So the body does want to move, but I mean, these are things that you guys are already doing in high performance sport. But if you find that on your rest days, so days when you don't have organized activity, or if you found right now that your rink access is limited, then try to engage in other types of physical activity so that it's not having a negative impact on your sleep. Limiting beverage consumption, that one just makes sense so that we don't have to wake up and go to the washroom. Keeping your room quiet and dark, and very dark, which isn't really a problem right now because it gets dark so early and stays dark in the morning. But as the seasons change, it can be a good time to invest in blackout blinds, or, for the time in which we might be able to travel. There's lots of athletes that will travel with the masks that go over their eyes so that they can keep it dark. Going to sleep and waking up at the same time each day, that has a lot to do with the routine. So what our body likes routine. And so if you're having to stay up late for, a training session later on in the evening, that's okay. So we want a little bit of leeway, I would say, in that schedule to allow that to happen. But if you're staying up late for no reason, then that is something that you would want to adjust. And probably one of the best quotes that I've ever heard in regards to trying to go to bed and wake up at the same time was said that you shouldn't stay up doing something that you wouldn't wake up early for. So if you're just up late because and you know that you would never wake up early to, go on your phone or go onto social media, then it shouldn't be something that keeps you up at night. Napping early. Now, napping it's not really a controversial topic, but some athletes and some of those involved in high performance sport love to nap, and others find that it makes them feel more drowsy. So it's not like an across the board recommendation. If you are going to nap, you want to keep it short, 30 minutes or less, and you want it to happen early in the day so that it doesn't affect your ability to sleep at night. So I know that for, if we think about tournament environments, there's lots of athletes that will nap if they have 2 games in a day, or if they have a night game, they'll nap the following day to kind of recover from that. And that's okay, as long as it's relatively short in duration and happening earlier within the day. These are just some basic ones, but I would say that it helps. So having a comfortable sleep environment, such as a comfortable mattress, is critical. Having a good pillow is also critical. And then white noise or other types of ways to cancel out sound can be really helpful depending on the environment in which you need to sleep. Right now, that environment is probably your home, so you're used to the noises there. But when athletes do travel, it can be really helpful if they have, and you can get lots of different apps on your phone that has like white noise or different types of noise that just kind of cancel out everything else. So that's something that is useful to be able to fall asleep quite quickly. This isn't something that we need to be worrying about right now, but there's many teams that I work with that if I'm helping them with their nutrition plan in preparation for travel, we're also talking about the impact that it can have on their sleep. And I think sometimes just talking through it with athletes and teams can really, set the stage for what they need to be preparing for, planning for. If it's teams that travel all the time and they're rooming with other athletes, make sure that athletes that have relatively similar routines are staying in the same spaces so that you'll kind of be agreeing on when it's going to be time to go to bed. Other things that can be quite helpful, again, if we do have to travel, is taking anything that is kind of typical in your sleep routine at home and taking it with you so that you don't have that many changes. So, it used to be super common and maybe it still is. You see lots of athletes traveling with their own pillow when the space allows, and that can be a good strategy. If you're an athlete or a coach that needs to read, but it needs to be not on your phone, then just make sure that you're reading, like bringing a book or something like that to have with you, just in order to ensure that that's not changing the routine. And then that white noise can be another really good one. And those like face masks for your eyes that can block out the light can also be very helpful depending on when people are traveling. Again, not something in our immediate future that's going to be happening, but there's big components that can happen if you're traveling quite a few different time zones, or if you have longer flight time, and just things to plan for, I would say, as a team. Whether it's different avoidances, especially of things like alcohol and caffeine and their impact on sleep and sleep quality. And then the use of sunlight. So if you're having to change time zones, managing jet lag with going outside, getting fresh air, using sunlight to help your body adjust to the new time zone that you might be in. So this is the participation part. So what I'm going to show you is a questionnaire or kind of a survey that you can use. It's really helpful to actually rate your own level of sleepiness. And so I'm going to read through these statements, and I want you to rate yourself on a 0 to 3 scale on how likely in these scenarios, how likely it is that you would fall asleep. And then I want you to tally up your responses, and then I'll show you the results on the following slide. So if you're very unlikely, then you'll give yourself a 0. If you're very likely, then you'd give yourself a 3. That's kind of the range. So if you're sitting and reading, how likely is it that you'll fall asleep? So give yourself a score between 0 and 3. If you're watching television, how likely is it that you'll fall asleep? If you're sitting inactive in a public place, so in a theater, cinema, or in a meeting. If you're a passenger in a car or on public transport for 1 hour without a break, how likely is it that you'll fall asleep? If you're lying down to rest in the afternoon when circumstances permit, how likely is it that you'll fall asleep? I like this one the best. If you're sitting and talking to someone, how likely is it that you'll fall asleep? Don't give yourself a 3 for that one. That would not be good. If you're sitting quietly after lunch, or if you're in a car while stopped for a few minutes in traffic. So add up your total. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So add up your total there, and then I'll show you the results on the next page. And this is actually a really good questionnaire to do at multiple times. Our seasons change, the expectations placed on high performance athletes change throughout a season. If you asked an athlete this right when they were doing exams, it would be quite different. If you asked them right in the middle of a training camp, it would be quite different. So, it can really, I would say, help someone understand the amount of sleepiness that they might be carrying. So these are the results. 0 to 5, that's lower than normal daytime sleepiness. 6 to 10, higher than normal daytime sleepiness. And now we start getting into the kind of excessive daytime sleepiness. So 11 to 12, mild excessive daytime sleepiness. 13 to 15, moderate excessive daytime sleepiness, and then severe. So 16 to 24, you're pretty tired all of the time. So it can be really helpful to reflect back on those questions. I mean, I know athletes that you sit them anywhere and they can lean against a wall and fall asleep. It's a skill, but if it's something that's happening all the time, then we know that they're carrying a lot of fatigue. And because I've been working in high performance sport for so long, lots of times athletes will say, well, isn't that just normal? If you're training a lot, shouldn't you always just be tired? And no, you shouldn't. So you want to find some solutions to what might be leading to this amount of sleepiness that you're carrying throughout your day. So we'll jump into the area that I like the most because it's my area, but looking at the connection with food intake and sleep, and not just what we touched on last night for those that were able to join of the importance of a bedtime snack, but more looking at the impact that not getting enough sleep can actually have on our food choices. So it obviously has a big impact, and it really has an impact, I would say, on our overall routine. So we know that restricting sleep to less than 6 hours per night for 4 or more nights has been shown to have a big impact on overall performance. So cognitive performance, our mood, it impacts the way that our body actually processes sugar, so glucose metabolism. We already talked about the impairments with immune function, increased feelings of both fatigue and confusion. And the big one that many athletes will tell me is that it impacts their ability to recover. So they'll feel muscle soreness for a longer period of time, and they actually won't be able to build like they should the amount of muscle tissue. So protein synthesis will be impacted. And so we want to find, obviously, some solutions to this to ensure that the work that you're doing is actually transferring to your body, adapting to training. We also know that those that have problems with sleep and that do not get enough sleep actually will see a difference in the types of foods that they will crave. And so over time, it can affect body composition, and that's for a number of reasons. Obviously, you're awake longer, so you can take in possibly more calories, but you'll notice when I go through what actually changes in the body, that it's sometimes a little bit out of our control. So we have hormones in our body that regulate food intake. They're leptin and ghrelin. So leptin inhibits us, or exerts an inhibiting impact on our food intake. So it kind of tells us like we're good, we're satisfied, we don't need to eat more food. And ghrelin actually stimulates our appetite. In a sleep-deprived state, you actually get a drop in leptin and an increase in ghrelin. So you get an increase in these hormonal regulators that will tell you to eat more food. We also know that we will have an increased hunger and desire for carbohydrate-based foods. And for anyone who likes to have or is in the routine of having night snacks, that's not a surprise to many of us. When we think of the foods that people like to eat at night, lots of athletes will say, I like to have crackers, popcorn, toast, all of these high, rich carbohydrate foods. And yes, they can be very important with helping us meet our energy requirements and helping our body recover. But if we're just eating out of habit, and we know that we're not getting enough sleep, there can be other components within our body that's actually making it hard for us to pump the brakes on some of our snacking at night. So what we eat at night can affect our sleep quality, and the sleep quality here that can impact is how quickly we can fall asleep. So we do want to have some carbohydrate foods, but we always want to make sure that it's combined with a high quality source of protein. We want to have our bedtime snack about 1 hour before we go to bed. That's based on comfort. So, you might find that you want to eat an hour and a half before you go to bed, depending on what's comfortable for you. Having a high-fat meal at night can have a negative influence on total sleep time. So it's not a great time to have a high-fat meal. We know that athletes that are not meeting their energy needs, so they're in a state of restricted calories or low energy availability is another term that you'll hear quite often in high performance sport. We know that being in that state is very stressful for the body, and that can impact our sleep quality. So that can impact our ability to fall asleep. So if I'm working with an athlete individually in the area of nutrition, I frequently will ask about how quickly they fall asleep at night and if they wake rested, because that gives me a lot of information about what might be happening with their diet and their sleep. Consuming alcohol can have a significant effect and reduce the duration of deep sleep. And we know that during deep sleep is when our body releases growth hormone, which is absolutely critical for overall recovery within the body. So we talked about bedtime snacking for the athletes and coaches that attended last night, and these would be similar examples in which it is shown that if we give the body a good source of protein before we go to bed, that it can actually help us get into deep sleep quicker. And so having dairy options there or dairy alternatives like fortified soy milk can be a great option in order to get your body into that deep sleep pattern. The other, and this was a slide from last night as well, but the key things here are just the consistency. So the consistency with wake up time and bedtime. And I'll address that in a couple slides later on about if that does change. So let's say you had a morning workout, so you have one day that's earlier, it can change for that, but you want to keep it within kind of a relatively short window. So maybe the wake up times and bedtime shift by maybe like an hour, hour and a half, but not much more than that. Remember, it's that consistency that the body is really looking for. So in the mental prep area, I'm just going to focus on the impact that sleep has, because I know that Kyle will be doing a presentation in his area of expertise, which is mental preparation. So a lack of sleep has an impact on so many different things, and this isn't news to any of us on the call. We just do not feel good if we haven't gotten enough sleep, and especially if that's being held over a number of days. So big fluctuations can happen in our mood. We could get a lot more irritable, frustrated. I mentioned the dependencies that can be brought on with stimulant use like caffeine. So those are all the components that would increase possibly with not getting enough sleep. On the impairment side, think about how this would impact, your job if you work, your schooling if you're in school, or your sport performance, because it's massive. So cognitive performance, memory, attention, concentration, decision-making, we know that the body and the brain requires sleep and consistency of sleep in order to function properly. So it really becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. So it starts at the top here where we get a lack of sleep. So maybe we have one night that we get like 5 hours of sleep, or 2 nights in a row of 5 hours of sleep. That leads to increased tiredness, or that increase in sleepiness during the day. That can lead to increased with difficulties just coping with daily life. So daily tasks that are being asked of us get harder. That can have an impact on lowering our self-esteem, lowering our confidence in sport, in school, in work. That can lead to an increased feeling of worry and or stress. And that can just in itself of increased stress can lead to a lack of sleep. And just because for many people right now, I would say stress levels are relatively high. There has been a lot of research looking at the impact of COVID on sleep, and insomnia rates are higher. So we know that many are dealing with a lot of stress. And so we want to find ways that we can manage that stress, and we want to find a way that works best for us. So we want to look at the strategies that are listed there at the bottom. And Dr. Samuels, who is an MD and a sleep specialist out of Calgary, and I've heard him speak quite a few times, and he said that if you look to these strategies such as meditation or breathing exercises or relaxation, and if you are thinking, okay, I want to use these strategies when I'm having trouble falling asleep, or I want to use them when I'm dealing with a lot of stress, you have to practice them. So you have to practice them just like you practice everything else, so that when you are dealing with stress or when you can't fall asleep, you can use them as one of your tools. But we don't just like bust out meditation for the first time when we're dealing with a night in which we can't fall asleep. So this slide was pulled together because lots of student athletes were asking about the impact with exams, or when is the best time to, have to prepare for any schooling or additional work that needs to be done. And there, again, there isn't an ideal time. It really depends on the person, in which, yes, there's student athletes that like and find that they have better concentration during the day. I would say I was one of those student athletes that I never pulled an all-nighter in all of my schooling. I would do it during the normal waking hours, but I had lots of other student athletes that I've worked with and that I know that would, study late into the night, and they found that it worked best for them. So we know that if we were to study all night or do something late into the night, we'd have to make up that sleep at some point. But it doesn't mean that doing that for the short term is the wrong decision if it works well for you. So looking at the link, and there has been research that's looked at whether it's giving athletes the opportunity to sleep more, or whether it's giving or making athletes intentionally sleep deprived, then they start looking at the impact that it can have on someone's physical conditioning. So that we know that the effect of exercise and sleep is very well connected throughout the day. We know that if we're active, we're going to be sleeping better. I find in my schedule, sometimes it just happens, and I'm sure for many on the call, the only time that you have ice time is late in the evening, so you're going to take it. I find that many athletes can do a physical hard session at night, and they're totally fine with falling asleep. So it really depends on the person. There's no research to support that one is better than the other. But if you have a hard time falling asleep after, let's say, a game that's quite late or a hard session, you want to find some strategies that can help your body maybe unwind from that a little bit, so that you are able to get to sleep. So it does become a bit of a cycle again of not allowing the body to recover. So you want to stay in the green arrows as much as possible. So you want to exercise as often and as hard as you'd like. You want to get good quality and a lot of hours of sleep, and that's going to lead to overall better recovery. As soon as one thing is disrupted, so let's say we're not getting enough sleep, then that's going to drop down our body's ability to recover, and that's going to drop down our physical ability to do training and exercise. So when we look at the impact that it has directly on components of sport performance, we know that not getting enough sleep can have an impact on someone's ability to do max effort. This would be with lifting. We know that it has an impact on someone's ability to sprint. So sprinting speeds can be improved when we're getting more sleep. And we also know that someone would rate a workout as harder. So their level of perceived exertion would be harder. They would rate the workout, let's say an 8 on 10, and it's because their body is tired. So if they're not getting enough sleep, they're going to increase their rating of perceived exertion. Research that was done in a different team sport, but still useful information. This was with varsity athletes, so 18 to 20-year-old basketball players. This is a study that was designed around getting the athletes to sleep at least 10 hours a night for a duration of 5 to 7 weeks. So that's pretty spectacular if you could get that amount of sleep for 5 to 7 weeks. That resulted in faster sprinting times, increased accuracy, overall improvements in ratings of physical and mental well-being. So those are big markers that they, in this study, felt were impacted by the amount of sleep that they were getting. And so it really demonstrated the importance of what the athletes thought that they needed versus what their body actually required, in which when they were kind of forced to sleep longer, they saw performance improvements. I've talked about many of these already, but one thing to be aware of is the response within the body, like the stress response. So we know if we're not getting enough sleep, we're going to have an increase in the stress response within the body, and that can actually be measured by increases in blood cortisol levels and decreases in human growth hormone levels. So that's not an environment that we want to be in for very long. And we also know that it drops our immune function. Again, not something that we want to be dealing with for an extended period of time. So if we can keep an athlete healthy by encouraging them to sleep more, then we know that they're not going to be missing as many days of a training session or a camp, or even into a competition environment. This was another slide that was developed later on after we started doing this presentation with more and more teams, because many would say, like, well, what do you deal or what do you do, or how do you manage sleeping in on the weekend? And so if you do like to sleep in on the weekend, or if that's the time where you can actually catch up on sleep, it's important to not have massive changes in your schedule. So, staying within a 2-hour window, I would say. So if you're doing a sleep in on a Saturday or a Sunday, keeping it within 2 hours of when you would normally wake up during the week. Anything more than that, and it can start to impact kind of the internal body clock that we have. So I have had athletes that say, well, would it be helpful to set an alarm for the weekend? And yes, it can be if you feel like you're going to sleep way too much. Because, for most athletes that would sleep in like till 11 or noon, they're going to be up later. So, everything's going to get moved around quite a bit. So sleeping in and catching up on sleep is important, as long as it doesn't impact when you would then be going to bed at night. The last thing that we'll touch on are some of the medical considerations, and this is where the work that Dr. Samuels does will be highlighted. I'll show you the link to their center and their screening tool. We know that obviously if we're sleep deprived, even for one night, can lead to increased rates of injury, way more likely for athletes to get sick. And we know that it'll impact growth, development, and optimal recovery. And if kind of going through this information, you start thinking about, okay, the issues that I'm having with sleep are more than what might have been discussed here, or, if you're thinking, well, there's no way that, working on those sleep tips is going to help me. It can be really important to really think about, if this is something that you're struggling with, to work with your family doctor about perhaps getting a referral to ask and assess any sleep issues that you might be dealing with. And it's important to get onto that quite early. So Dr. Samuels, this is the Center for Sleep.com. It's in Calgary. It's a human performance center for managing sleep. He's worked with many professional Olympic and Paralympic athletes. And on their website, they have a screening tool. So for any athlete that wonders, you know, is my sleep normal? Is this a normal amount of sleepiness to have? Or is this, you know, I always have to lie in bed for like at least an hour before I go to bed. What can I do about that? On the website right here, there is an athlete sleep screening questionnaire, which can identify or help you identify if what you're dealing with in regards to sleep is, you know, quote unquote normal, or if there's additional support that needs to be put into place. Because it can really be a struggle for high performance athletes. If you've been trying to work on sleep and you just feel it's going nowhere, I think it is really important to get some professional support. That can sometimes start with the family doctor, and then it might lead to other supports that you want to be working with. These are Dr. Samuel's fall back to sleep tips. So it's just kind of a summary of lots of the tips that we already talked about, but I like the one about the weekends. So maintaining your regular bedtime on a Saturday night so that you're more likely to get an extra hour of sleep to reduce your overall sleep debt. I think that's a tip that many of us would have a hard time doing, of keeping our weekend sleep times the same. We talked about having a dark room when you're sleeping, avoiding exposure to bright lights. That's your phone or that's a screen. I know teams have had different approaches to that. I've been to many multi-sport games. I've seen coaches that take phones away so that they are not a temptation. I've had other coaches that say, no, let the athletes have their phone, especially if they use it as an alarm or if they're using it for white noise. So it does come down to a team discussion. But we know that having a phone in front of our eyes can have an impact on how quickly we're going to fall asleep. And then increase your light exposure when you wake up. It can help you stay alert and wake you up in the morning, which is pretty hard to do in Saskatchewan in the winter. I must say it is very dark for an extended period of time. So that can make a morning workout a little bit more problematic. So when you're looking to assess sleep, I would say that that's athlete sleep screening questionnaire is probably one of the best places to start. But you can track your sleep, and that can be done just simply with a piece of paper and a pen. Yes, you can have fancy watches that measure your sleep, but you know, those might not be the most accurate tools that are available. Many of them are quite inaccurate and can lead to additional stress if you're worried about the numbers that you're seeing on a smartwatch and what it might be telling you about your sleep. When we're looking at checklists to better sleep, there's lots of them here. And so it's not something that we need to tackle everything at once, but athletes can be very successful with working towards a good sleep routine at night. Or, you know, I've had athletes that say after this presentation, you know, I'm going to work on, you know, having at least an hour without a screen before I go to bed. And that's a really big goal, I would say, with lots of our dependencies on screens. So whatever you feel is appropriate that can help with kind of building a relaxing and creating that bedtime routine, or getting into the management of any anxiety or stress, or just doing like a little check-in with yourself before you're going to bed. Making your bedroom more sleep friendly. That's really tricky right now if you're doing virtual learning, because most people, their bedroom is where they study or where they do schoolwork. So there's lots of, you know, factors that might be in their room that's a distraction. So we want it to just be a place where you're going to sleep. There are different types of apps. None of them are endorsed by the Sport Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan, but there's lots of different ones on there that you can get, whether they're different sleep trackers or alarms, sleep sounds. I've always used, I have 2 children, I use sleep sound machines, so ocean noise, white noise, whatever it might be. My trick when, I used to leave my house, if I ever had to stay in a hotel, I would always leave the fan on in the washroom to kind of drown out any hallway noise. So there's lots of strategies. And I would say it's really helpful for athletes to talk with teammates, talk with coaches, if there's something that they're struggling with, to really work through it, because it has a massive impact, towards the pathway to high performance sport. And if you're already competing at a high level, keeping yourself there is to keep yourself healthy. So this is the action piece. And so I want you to reflect. And if you want to reflect by typing it into the chat, then that's awesome. But think about one change that you can make a priority, that you can bring into your routine to really focus on making sleep a priority within your life. And I put this picture on there because I had a coach when I competed that would typically say, you snooze, you lose. And because we'd have athletes that would snooze in the morning, like hit the snooze button, and they wouldn't show up to training. So that was something that I heard all the time as an athlete. And I wouldn't say you lose, but you're definitely missing out on a training opportunity. So I don't know, does anyone, you can unmute yourself as well, but does anyone have anything that they could, put into action following this presentation to work on their sleep quality? Any takers? Oh, maybe I can see the chat. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't.
Can you see it?
Nope.
No. If you do need to nap in a tournament situation, is there a recommended time period in which you should wake up prior to the next game for mental awareness? And if so, so that the body is awake and not groggy? Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and there's a number of things that you want to achieve there. And so if you were looking at like a tournament situation, I would probably say you'd have like a morning game, possibly. You'd have your recovery, like eating after that game. You'd go back to wherever you're staying. And then that would be the ideal time to have a nap. And again, a nap of 30 minutes or less. Like I know lots of athletes that are like, I had a nap, it was 3 hours. Like that's not a nap, that you slept. So, napping, if we want to recharge ourselves, you don't want to get into deep sleep. That's the primary goal, is if you let yourself get into deep sleep and then you try to come out of that with an alarm that goes off, or teammates that are like, hey, we got to go, that's when most will feel groggy. Now, the nap thing, not everyone feels better from napping. So that's why, if you have 2 games in a day, you never want it to be like the whole team needs to rest. Because it might not be a good solution for everyone. Time in advance of the other one, I would take it from my point of view, in that we don't want to, miss out on times to fuel. So let's say we have one game, we finish it, we eat, we nap, we can wake up, eat again, possibly eat again, depending on when the next game is. So I would say nap early and nap for a precise amount of time, meaning you are setting an alarm. Any actions for any athletes or parents or coaches on the call, actions that you can put into your own routine to maximize sleep or make sleep a priority? No takers on that one. My personal one is I have to read, but it can't be stressful. So I used to read National Geographic, and if you read National Geographic, it's like doom and gloom our planet. So I found it was like not putting me to sleep. It was making me stressed out.
Jeremy Allard says in the chat, our family is going to turn off our TVs and phones earlier. I highly recommend that. I've done it for about 1.5 years now. Difference.
Yeah, that's a massive one. I would say across the board with most of my high performance athletes, they will identify themselves that that's a problem, that that's what's keeping them awake, and it's not for anything important. So it can be helpful. Yeah, turn it off, put it on airplane mode so it doesn't buzz. That can be important too, because if you get notifications, even if it's on silent, it'll, you know, vibrate if you have that, or turn off all your notifications at night. That can be really important as well. TVs can be bad. TVs in bedrooms can be bad as well. So, you know, anytime that we have that light in front of our eyes, that can have a really big impact on our ability to get to sleep, and just our body's ability to wind down. So that can be a great goal, a family goal, which makes it a lot more easier because everyone's on the same page. Or even seeing if you can do it, you know, for other athletes on the call, just saying, okay, I want to see if I can turn that off, because it really becomes a dependency that we have on screens. So just in summary, we want to look at, and we have looked at, kind of all components that sleep can affect with both our body composition, and our mind. We know that it impacts both our psychological and physiological functions. When we're looking to improve sport performance, when we're looking to improve our ability to adapt to a training session, get stronger, for younger athletes, our ability to grow and develop, sleep is a massive piece of that puzzle. So if it's something that we're not looking at, then we're really missing out on a component that can really help the body's adaptation. So we do want to implement strategies. You guys mentioned some with the screen time. We want to look at not only looking at, can we get more hours of sleep, because that might not be you know, manageable, or it might not be realistic to get more hours of sleep, but can we improve then the sleep quality? If we can't get more hours, can we get ourselves to sleep quicker? Are we able to get into that deep sleep quicker? Can we manage our bedtime routine so our body knows what's coming? So that can be an important piece as well of, you know, I have lots of athletes that'll say, well, I have to do my homework at night. That's the only time that I have to do it. So I can't go to bed earlier. Okay, don't. But can we create an environment to improve your sleep quality? So there's contact information. These are both the manager of sports science and the manager of sport medicine, both Travis Laycock and Scott Joulet. So if you have questions about any of our other Sport Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan programs, obviously you can chat with Joel, but these would be the other individuals that you can chat with as well. So are there any questions that you guys might have? I'm going to stop the share now so that I can actually see the chat. Sleep trick is one, I'm just reading one of the comments. Yeah, that's a great comment. And I think that it can become really important to just have, you know, time to ourselves and time to really focus on sleep. That can be really important. And, you know, kind of have a bit of a recharge. You know, there's some athletes that, you know, and coaches that they are not able to kind of unplug at night because they have too many thoughts that are going on. So, you know, some find it really helpful to journal before they go to bed. Like, let's get all of these, you know, thoughts or to-dos. I need them out of my brain before I'm going to lie down. I find that for myself, if I'm thinking, oh, I need to do this tomorrow, am I going to forget? Well, I need to write that down so I'm not thinking about that the whole time when I'm trying to fall asleep. Any questions from anyone on the call tonight? You can probably hear my children jumping upstairs in our house. That's their go-to move if I'm on a Zoom call.
Yeah, any questions here for Heather in the chat or in person? Floor
I have
is
a question,
open.
Heather.
Yeah.
Sleep sounds. I've started using them probably since COVID started. And I find that I typically just Google and YouTube sleep sounds, and there's the 10-hour option, 3-hour option. I typically pick the 3-hour option because I think I want to get to that deep sleep. Is there anything achieved there, or should I be not conscious about that, and the 10-hour sleep sounds good enough and can carry me through the night and get me to that deep sleep?
That's a great question. I think it really depends on the environment in which you're sleeping. And I know that, some people find if there's noise in the night that's kind of out of their control, then they would use the sleep sounds all night. So my example of if you're staying in a hotel and people are in the hallway, that can pull you out of deep sleep, and that can kind of make you start back in that cycle. So in that situation, having noise that goes all night can be really helpful because it keeps that nice, consistent sound, especially if it's something that you like. If it's calming, if it helps just kind of block everything else out, I would go with the one that works for you. If you find you wake up after 3 hours because you hear all of a sudden it's too quiet, then I would go with 10 hours for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's your favorite noise?
Oh, I've been all over the place. Whatever comes up on the Google search first, I find.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always selected that 3 hour just because I'm like, well, I want to get into that deep sleep, and I don't find myself waking up after the 3 hours. But I wonder if I should give the 10-hour one a try one night. So
well, if you're not waking up, then you know that it's working well for you. And yeah, there's lots of great noises that, like, our house has ocean noise all the time. That just seems to be something that's calming. It's like there's a rhythm to it. I know other, parents with young children have used like just white noise where it's just like static. I find that one a little bit stressful. I don't know why. It's just a little bit intense. But ocean it's something that I love. So it's something that's very calming.
Yeah, that or thunderstorm are probably my two.
Thunderstorm, yeah. Any questions before we wrap up for tonight?
We've got a few going.
Okay. How do you break the cycle when you play late at night, travel home 2 hours and have to attend school the next day, then play again the next night right after school to prepare? Yeah. The schedule that's sometimes in place of teams that I've worked with, it's a lot. And I would say that one of the best strategies is I kind of can compare that scenario to someone who works like shift work. And the only thing that we have control of is how quickly we can get to sleep. And so if we can build our skills, so for this example of, school age, high performance athletes, if they can build the skill that they can fall asleep quickly, that's awesome. So, they can't change the game schedule. They can't change the school schedule, even though lots of my athletes do flex school. So I guess they kind of can change the school schedule. Well, when you can't change that schedule, what you can prepare for is, are you someone that can fall asleep quickly? Yes, no. If you can, great. If you can't, then what can we work on to help with that? I've worked with athletes that are also, they also work shift work, and they can honestly put their head down and they're asleep, and it's a skill. So they've worked on being able to do that because they, work long shifts, all different shifts, and they need to be able to fall asleep quickly. So for that question, I would work on that sleep hygiene part, so that, comfortable pillow, noise if they like noise, like the white noise, eye covering so that it's dark and consistent. That can be something that's really helpful. But that's a good question, and that's very much a reality of your sport that you want to be able to manage. Any other questions from anyone on the call? Joel, you're a sleep champion.
Yeah, I sleep pretty well. We've dove into this a bit with some presentations, and Hockey Canada's got a sleep doctor that I've been out of the Sleep Performance Center, and it makes a big difference. One of the things he just talked about that would help Neil there is, he said to really one bad night's sleep's not performance. So if you sleep well 6 out of 7 nights, you should get enough rest. Like I think lots of athletes that I've dealt with anyways get really stressed out if they a night's sleep before a game, but if you had a good week's worth of sleep, you perform well. That's the key.
Yeah. And the worst thing for sleep is to stress about sleep. And so it's finding a way to manage the stress. And yeah, one poor night of sleep is not going to derail you. And so that is, that can help if someone has had a bad night of sleep that obviously is out of their control. You can still have a great game. You can still have a great training session.
And I think you made a good point of like practicing because the bigger the game, the more stress, and nerves, and it's hard to fall asleep in those situations if you're playing in a championship game or something like that. So
yeah,
practice this stuff all year long to me because it makes a big difference in the way you perform.
Yeah, it's very much a skill like anything else. And it's, if we're using something like breathing exercises or meditation or relaxation, our body needs to know what to do with that. We can't just say, try some deep breathing exercises the night before a game. Like you have to know how to manage that, how to do it, what works best for you, what doesn't, because there's a lot of components of sport that can be very stressful. So just like everything else, we want to find ways to manage it.
Any other questions? Don't be shy.
Silence.
No, nothing else.
Nope.
Well, if nothing else, thanks again, Heather. If somebody on the call here does have a question, feel free to email me or Heather, and or we'll make sure we get your question. So appreciate you doing this, and thanks a lot for speaking with us tonight.
No problem. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the questions that came through. And if people have questions at a later date, they can always find my contact information on the Sport Medicine and Science website.